Thank you so much for joining this morning. It's absolutely fantastic to have you here and to be working with you. My name's Stephanie. I work at RM Partners NHS Cancer Alliance, and I lead on all of our work around kind of engagement and involvement, and that is in particular with the charity and all the community sector. Um, we're very lucky to be joined today by our colleague, Dr. Mohsin Chowdhury, who will be leading the kind of clinical part of this session. And we'll really go into detail about what HPV is, what the vaccine is, and there will be an opportunity for questions. I'll finish up at the end with a bit more information about the kind of practical campaign delivery and some of the grant work. But just for some context here, I know there are some familiar faces and names in the room, but some of you we haven't worked with before. So RM Partners is the NHS Cancer Alliance for both South West and North West London. So we cover a huge patch. And we cover all things to do with cancer care and treatment, and that also includes early diagnosis and prevention and screening. So within the prevention and screening element, we do a huge amount of work with the national screening programs. So that includes some of the things that you may be familiar with, like breast screening, cervical screening, bowel screening, etc. This piece of work at the moment, or a huge project for the Alliance at the moment, is the HPV vaccine. We know that across our patch, the numbers and uptake are really low. And we're doing a huge amount of work with community organisations, but also at various levels with different people within the healthcare system or within the school system to really try and change that. We know we can't do that on our own, so that's why it's absolutely amazing to be working in partnership with you, especially coming from the kind of faith angle. So everyone on this call hopefully should either be a faith-based organisation or a faith leader within their community. And we know you are absolutely integral in terms of getting health messaging out there. The session today is to really give you that kind of clinical background so you can feel confident having the conversations during the grant period, and also, as I said, introduce you to some of the kind of practical things that we'll be offering to support you during the campaign delivery. I'm just going to share my screen, and then I'm going to hand over to Mohsin, who will talk you through a bit about the HPV vaccine and some of the kind of wider clinical information. Can everyone see my screen? Mohsin, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
I can see your screen, yes, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Are you happy to hand over, Mohsin, or take over even?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, so welcome everybody to our webinar. So without further ado, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about HPV and what it is and what the vaccine is. And we'll talk a little bit about myths. We'll talk a bit about misconceptions. We know there's a lot of misconceptions surrounding this vaccine, which is why we are struggling with the uptake, particularly in certain parts of London. And then we'll cover some frequently asked questions as well. Please make it as interactive as possible, and do ask some questions in the chat. At the minute, I'm talking to completely blank faces, so if you can put your camera on, it's just a bit nicer for me if that's possible, just so that I know that you're there, and it's nice to always see faces as well. Okay, so next slide, please.
Hold on, I'm going to stop sharing and reshare. It seems to be glitching.
Thank you. Thank you to those of you who've turned your camera on. Thanks.
Bear with me. Okay, second time lucky.
There we go. Lovely. Okay. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so what is HPV? So effectively, it is a virus. It stands for human papilloma virus. We call it HPV for short. And it's a group of virus that affects everybody, be it men and women. We know that there's over 200 types, majority of which are not problematic, but some are. So we split them into low and high risk groups. Majority, as I say, are in the low risk groups. And at some point, many of us, probably, if not all of us, have had contact with some of these viruses. They are spread by skin-to-skin contact, particularly intimate skin-to-skin contact as well. The difficulty is that when we do get infected with this virus, we don't know about it. It usually got no symptoms, unlike, for example, a virus that might cause a respiratory tract infection, the most famous in our recent time being COVID. You are fully aware, usually in the majority of cases, that you've got an infection because you may have symptoms. But with HPV, you don't have symptoms. We know that the majority of people will clear it, but there is a small section of people that won't clear it. And in those people, a persistent infection that is not being cleared by their own body can result in precancerous changes and then go on to cancerous changes, resulting in a number of cancers that can affect both men and women. As I mentioned, it is spread through close skin-to-skin contact, particularly of the genitals from infected individuals. Contracting HPV is not about promiscuity, as it can be contracted during somebody's first intimate physical contact. We know that many faith groups, people who follow certain religions and certain faiths and certain cultures, will choose to abstain from sexual practice until they are married. That does not always protect you from contracting HPV, and we have to now start moving the conversation on from this particular infection being linked to sexual activity, but this is really a virus that causes many types of cancer, and there is something that we can do about it. So my spin on this is there is a vaccine that exists that will prevent many types of cancer from occurring in your children when they become adults. And therefore, it is important that we try and spread the word around this, as it is purely preventative. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so how does it cause cancer? Effectively, there's about 14 of those 200 that I mentioned that are high risk, and they will cause around about 5% of all cancers, actually. And the most common sites that we are encountering are cervical, so that's women, cervix cancer, cervical cancer, vulval cancer, again, women, vaginal cancer, and then anal and penile cancer, both men and women can be affected. The most increasing number that we are actually seeing is in head and neck cancer, and there's been a number of high-profile cases covered in the media recently of young individuals, both men and women, who have gone on to develop head and neck cancers. These can be quite disabling once you have to operate on them, because you are talking about somebody's facial features being potentially altered, you're talking about their tongue being potentially altered, and the way that their neck. So they can have dramatic, life-changing consequences as a result of an operation, and we are finding that more and more of these cancers are now being linked to this particular virus, whereas traditionally a lot of head and neck cancers were linked to smoking. We are now seeing a rise in this particular cancer being caused by the HPV, the human papilloma virus, and this is why preventing that from happening in the first place is really important. Next slide, please. So how does a vaccine work? It's effectively very simple. It works in the same way as many common vaccines. It stimulates an immune response. It prevents the infection from taking hold, and so that when your body does come into contact with that HPV, it will protect you and it will fight it off. It will recognize it as a foreign invader to the body, and it will mount an immune system response to it. The idea is that we give it early, and the reason we give it early is not because we want to encourage young people to have or engage in sexual intercourse from an early age. There's absolutely no evidence that supports that, but really it's simply about giving them the best opportunity to mount a good response, so that when they do become adults and they do go on to encounter that virus in the future, which we know that many of them will, it's about providing them the opportunity to have already built an immune response. We know that vaccines work better in young people. That's why we have a vaccination schedule for young people, commonly given in the first few years of life. We know that vaccines don't work that well in elderly people, which is why, for example, when there was a coronavirus vaccination program or other vaccination programs that we see, we often have to give 2 or 3 doses for vaccinations to become effective in our elderly population. So the younger you can be vaccinated, we know that the more your body is likely to accept the vaccine and to mount the response and to give you that protection that you need in order to then fight it off in the future when the child becomes an adult, or when they enter their first relationships, be that before marriage, be it after marriage, depending on their own personal preferences. At least they are then protected. We know that some countries even give it earlier. For example, Portugal, Pakistan, and Lithuania, they give it even earlier at the age of 9. So we give it at the age of 12 to 13 in the UK, and we've now got a long-standing established programme over the last 20 years of giving that vaccine at that particular age group. Next slide, please. So some information, the vaccine is called Gardasil 9. If you want to look it up, you can, and have a look at the vaccine and how it works and the research that's linked to that particular vaccine. As I say, a phenomenal amount of doses. This is a long established, well-researched vaccine. This is not a new program by any stretch of the imagination. It's now been going for nearly 20 years. We only give one-off dose because we know that if we do that in the early years, it gives enough protection, and that is suitable for all people up until the age of 25. We encourage people to catch up until the age of 25. There is a small section of people that may need 1 or 2 extra vaccinations. I think that's beyond the scope of this talk because it's such a small section. But for the vast majority, it is under 25, still can have the vaccine, still can catch up, and it's for both boys and girls. The good news is for faith, groups, particularly those who follow particular dietary laws, be that vegetarian, be it halal, be it kosher, there is nothing that would prevent you from having that vaccine. Both the Jewish community and the Muslim community, for example, have confirmed that they are happy for the vaccine to be given because they don't see any contraindication for the halal or the kosher. And equally, those communities, for example, I know that there are people who may follow a strict vegetarian diet from either Sikh or Hindu communities. There is nothing that would prevent them from having the vaccine because there is no animal products, there's no genetic material, there's nothing that would prevent or that perhaps conflict with their religious views. We know that it is effective because, as I say, we have got data to support that. And when we do vaccinate at that age that we are targeting, we end up with a 90% protection. So that's pretty good from a one-off dose, a one-off program at that age. The UK has actually seen a major decline in HPV infections where the vaccine uptake has been successful, and that is something to be celebrated. And if we look at countries like Australia, where the uptake is even more, they are really not seeing HPV related cancer. So that is an incredible achievement to not have cancers being caused by a preventable infection. And I think that's something to be celebrated. And I really do hope that we can get that to that stage within communities within London. So by 2058, we estimate that it could prevent over 100,000 cancer cases in the UK. That in itself is really powerful. Cancer is such an emotive topic and such an emotive discussion. It impacts, unfortunately, every household, and every family will know of somebody who unfortunately does have cancer at some point in their lives. And therefore, if we can prevent a large subsection of some of those cases, then I think that's something to really encourage. So as I mentioned before, we are targeting the vaccine at the age of 12 to 13, and it can be given up to the age of 25. So it's not a case of, okay, you've missed it, you can't have it, or you've missed it, think again. People do go on to have it up until the age of 25, and that can then be given through either school nurse or GP, depending on the age that they choose to receive it. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, is it safe? Majority of the people that have the vaccine do not encounter any major side effects beyond some minimal pain. Sometimes I have a sore arm, sometimes I have a little bit of a vaccine reaction in terms of a little bit of a mild fever, a little bit of a headache. Serious extreme side effects can happen, and I think it's important to be acknowledged that, but they are incredibly rare. We have given over 280 million, probably since that figure's been published, it's probably more like 300 million because that's a slightly old number now. And prior to the vaccine being introduced, it went through a long period of research and clinical trials. So there's a lot of data, probably spanning the majority of my lifetime, that supports the safety and the efficacy. We know that it works as well. So a vaccine's got to be safe, but it's also got to work as well. Otherwise, there's no point in giving it. So with the HPV vaccination program, we know that it does work, and we know that in the vast majority of cases, it doesn't cause any serious side effects. Obviously, we do need parents to be on board with this. They have to give their permission and their consent. We know that parents have got reservations, and therefore this is where we hope that you as individuals in your communities will come forward and help parents to make informed decisions and perhaps help them to dispel any myths, but also help alleviate any fears that they may have about the vaccination itself. So depending on where the parents live, they will be sent either communication via email, some of them are, or via mobile phone, or via the parental communications that come through the school. So parents do have to give permission in order for the vaccine to be given to their child. Next slide, please. So some frequently asked questions, and these are some things that maybe you may have to ask me today, but I'll just try and cover some of them. And then if there are any other questions, please do put them on the chat. What we can raise hands in a moment. So obviously people talk about, well, if you've had the vaccine, do I still need to screen for cervical cancer? Yes, effectively women do need to still undergo cervical screening because it does protect against the majority types of HPV. It doesn't protect against all types, and therefore it's still important that people do engage with the cervical screening program. So it's not a case of you've had the vaccine, you don't need to have the cervical screening. But it is a case of still participate because there will be a very, very small number of people that may not mount the response that's required and may go on to still have a chronic infection. So whilst we know that it does reduce the vast majority of cases of cervical cancer, there is still always a small population that may still go on to develop it. So it's important that people still do continue to participate in the cervical screening program. And the good news is that's now gone from 3 years to a 5 year in the vast majority of cases. So hopefully it's less invasive, it's less traumatic for women that do undergo that particular screening program. We talked about is it acceptable for faith communities. I'm happy to answer any further questions you may have about that. Do boys need it? Yes, absolutely, because if they have it, it means that they can carry the virus, they can infect other people with the virus, and therefore they do benefit from the cancer protection. We do see cancers in men, in boys, that are caused by the HPV virus. We do see that, so it's important that boys have it as well. It is a bit of an, historically it was given to girls, but that has changed as the science has changed. So there is no reason why boys should not have it in addition to girls as well. We've talked about, is it linked to sexual activity? No, and we need to move this conversation on. From that, there is a virus that exists that protects your children in the future against a number of cancers, and therefore it would be wise to give it to them so that they don't go on to develop these particular types of cancers. And that's really the conversation that needs to be had now, not there is HPV is, something that potentially historically has always been talked about in the context of sexual activity. And also to put it into context, we know that many faith groups, do have reticence and they do feel a little bit nervous about this because they are worried about, that particular angle of things. There's no evidence to suggest that. We fully respect everybody's personal preferences. Some people will choose to abstain from sexual activity before marriage. Some people will choose to have sexual activity before marriage, and that can vary. And also, it's just important to remember that relationships are complex. And often some people, even though they may themselves not have had a previous sexual relationship, it's very difficult to predict what their future partner status is. Some people are onto their second and third marriage, and therefore relationships are complex. So it's not about predicting or suggesting anyone's sort of pattern or behavior. It's really just about giving your children the opportunity to build a response to a number of viruses that cause cancer, and that is to protect them in the future. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've talked about myth number 1, so I won't focus on that too much. We've talked about, is it only needed for girls? We've talked why it's important for boys to have it as well. There's often concerns about viruses, vaccinations, and I understand that. But with this particular vaccination, we know that we've had a long-standing data set. And as I say, I think it's closer to 300 million people now, rather than 280 million people. So it's a long-established, well-received, well-researched vaccination. HPV vaccine is a contraceptive. Absolutely no evidence of that. There's no evidence for that. My child will get a mild case of HPV when they receive the vaccine. Again, it's not a live virus, therefore they will not become infected with the virus. It is about introducing a response. So it's about training the body to recognize the virus in the future. HPV is uncommon, sadly not. Actually, majority of us will have it in their lifetime, many of us without symptoms. So we may have had it, we may not have. Most of us won't know. So it is an incredibly uncommon infection that lives on the skin of many of us, regardless of other factors, and therefore it is impossible to predict who's going to get it and who's not going to get it. And that is why giving a vaccine to prevent them from developing an infection as a result of chronic exposure is one way to prevent those cancers from happening in the future. Next slide, please. HPV can be treated. I mean, this is a really good question. There isn't a cure for the actual virus, but there's ways to treat HPV-related problems such as precancerous lesions and warts. There isn't. The only way to remove HPV-related cancers is through surgery and through ongoing treatment afterwards, which can be incredibly invasive, incredibly life-changing, and unfortunately, some people do go on to die from HPV-related cancers, and that's what we want to prevent from happening. Barrier methods prevent you from getting HPV. Sadly not. It's spread through skin-to-skin contact. Therefore, we know that condoms at the best of times are not always a particularly good way of protecting against things. They are good to an extent, but they're not that good at protecting against everything, and HPV is not something that can be prevented through barrier method use. We've talked about the fact that HPV vaccines have been here for a while. So as I say, there is a long-standing data to show of its real use in real life. And then obviously we've talked a little bit about the fact that children, that is given at the early age, children aren't sexually active, therefore there's no need to vaccinate early. It's not about encouraging early sexual activity. It's not about any of that. It is simply about allowing them the chance to build an immune response so that when they do start sexual activity, be that before marriage, after marriage, whatever it is that they choose to do, that they have got the protection to deal with it should they encounter those viruses, to prevent them from developing those cancers that we've mentioned. Next slide, please. So obviously for faith and the HPV vaccine, so obviously we know that the majority of faith groups, we know that there's a variation in religious practices and in diversity within our patch in London, which is something to be celebrated. But if you actually look at the common denominator that runs through all the major religions, it's about protecting your health and your well-being of your community, your family, your children. And therefore, we know that that is something that can unify us all, regardless of what faith we choose to practice or not, in some cases. We know that protecting our children and giving them the best chance in life is important, which is why a lot of parents do choose to give vaccinations against a whole lot of other diseases. And therefore, that is not only protecting our children, but it's also protecting the community at large as well. So there is a religious obligation and an obligation in many faiths to protect not only yourself, your family, but also those people around you as well. Next slide, please. So just looking at some religions in a bit more detail. So Christianity, for example, believe that bodies are a gift from God. And again, that's a common theme throughout many religions, particularly of the Abrahamic religions as well. And therefore, the HPV vaccine is a simple way to care for that gift from God by helping to protect against several types of cancer. So taking steps to safeguard health reflects good stewardship and gratitude for that provision. In Hinduism, so the sacred philosophy of Dharma includes duty to care to themselves and those around us, again, emphasizing that community responsibility as well. So HPV vaccine helps prevent several cancers and supports long-term well-being, and protecting one's health is a way to honor responsibilities to family and community. In Islam, again, it's seen as a form of amanah, a trust from Allah, God. HPV vaccine prevents several cancers and supports long-term well-being. Same within Judaism as well. It emphasizes Shmirat Haguf, which is a responsibility to care for bodies, and the vaccine is an effective and safe way to do that and to protect against long-term well-being. And again, very similarly to all of the religions mentioned, caring for health is responsible, is a responsibility and also a gratitude. And then same within Sikhism as well, it's caring for your body is a form of respect and gratitude. The vaccine offers long-term protections, but also they emphasize the importance of supporting health, not only for body, but also for mind and spirit as well. And I think that's an important point to emphasize as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is where we need your help, because we know that community organisations are trusted by the people that are part of your communities or part of your faith groups, and therefore that allows you the opportunity, it allows us the opportunity to have those conversations in safe spaces. No question is silly, no question should be met with any judgment. People have got legitimate concerns. Some of that is unfortunately because of misconceptions, some of that comes through misinformation. But it's important that you allow individuals to have that conversation and provide a forum for that. So we are entirely supportive of that, and we hope that with the webinar information and the materials provided, that you will feel empowered to have those conversations. I think it's really important to enforce what we've just discussed about faith in general. The common theme that ran through all of the faiths, regardless of which faith you choose to practice, is that it's about protecting your children, but also protecting the community. We know that the more people that are vaccinated, the more likely it is to give protection overall. So it's about not only serving yourself and your families, but also serving the communities and encouraging people to have that protection. We encourage you to share the verified information. Unfortunately, we do face a lot of the misinformation in this day and age due to the wonders of the internet and social media. And therefore, please do reflect on the information that we provide and that the information that's in your toolkit as well. Please encourage parents to return their consent forms. We know that some parents are happy for their children to have the vaccination, but they have busy lives and therefore they may not remember to do that. So sometimes it's a case of just not having done the extra step, which means that their child will be able to receive the vaccine. So just encouraging parents, once they are happy for their child to receive the vaccine, to also ensure that they provide permission and consent. Okay, so I think next slide is you. Okay. So as I say, this is some of the information that you can look at and visit specific to the boroughs, North West London and South West London. So certain providers are providing depending on where you live. So we know that North West London is provided by Vaccination UK. In South West London, it's provided by Kingston Richmond NHS Trust. Have a look at the information and the links that is contained within your toolkit, but we can also post the links on the chat if you're happy to do that as well, Stephanie, that would be great, so that you can have a look at that as well. So just to sort of summarize a little bit, so by choosing the HPV vaccine, you're giving your child an extra layer of protection that will benefit them as they become adults and protect them against not having catastrophic and life-changing results as a result of getting cancers that are head and neck, cervical, anal, penile, vaginal cancers as well. So this is not about anything other than giving your children protection from these cancers, which we know are preventable because they are caused by a virus. There is a vaccine, a treatment that exists to prevent those those viruses from taking a stronghold and causing cancer in the first place. And therefore, we would encourage you to have that discussion with parents. Fine. Okay, so I will pause here for a moment, and I'm happy to answer any questions before handing back to Steph just to talk about our current campaign. Are there any questions at the moment? I'm happy for hands to be raised. I'm happy for things to be put into the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Thanks, Mason. There's one or two in the chat there. So there's been a question from GB around if the vaccination was missed at school, how can a child be vaccinated going forward?
Yeah, so good question. So if you look at the resources that we provided, they can get a catch-up vaccination. If they're not able to get it through the provider, then they can contact their GP. So GPs can give it up until the age of 25 as well. So it is very easy to catch up with the virus from that point of view. So please do look at the specific resources for the specific age. After the age of 25, it becomes a little bit more difficult, but we know that we've got a big window of opportunity. So do encourage people to take part if they haven't already. It's not a case of they've missed the window, that's it. It's a case of fine, ideally 12 to 13, if not 15, 16, 17, 18. And we know that many children whose parents may not have wanted to have them to have the vaccine go on to have it when they can make the decision for themselves at the age of 18. So there is a catch-up program in place. I think there's another question, can it be transmitted non-sexually? Stephanie's answered that one. Yeah, it's basically through close, intimate skin-to-skin contact, okay? But that doesn't have to be sexual intercourse. And I think that's the important thing to remember. And then the other ones are AI. So I think Juby has a question.
Can I ask if a parent refuses and a child wants to take the vaccination, what is the step that they need to do? Or is it, is it only allowed after the age of 16 that they can go and take?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the consent law in the UK is based on a few guidelines, and without complicating matters, this is where things can sometimes become complicated. We would use a set of guidelines called Fraser guidelines. So there may be instances where children are able to consent themselves and override the wishes of parents. But I think for the purposes of this webinar, that starts to become a bit complicated because it's looking into an area of law that has been challenged in the past. But there, just to sort of give you a basis, if you look at Fraser guidelines, that's probably the guidelines that would be used. Children are allowed to make positive decisions. They're not allowed to make negative decisions without parental consent. But that's what would be used. But really, this is not about sort of overriding parental wishes or anything like this. I really would encourage children and parents to, and this is what I do as a GP all the time. I always want children and parents to be aligned so that they make decisions together as a family, because that is always the best outcome. But if you want to look into it a bit further, then Fraser guidelines would be used. And that would be on a case-by-case basis by the vaccination provider, potentially the GP, potentially the school. So it's very difficult to give a generic answer to that. But really, it's just about getting parents and children on board together.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I just add to, so the information that we have on the screen here around vaccination. So we're actually running a series of parent information webinars. So in support or conjunction with the work that you're doing at a grassroots level, these are open to everyone across all of North West and South West London. They are clinically led, and it's an opportunity for parents to join and listen to a very kind of similar presentation as you've heard today, but then there's an opportunity to ask questions at the end. So I know sometimes organisations maybe if you don't have that clinical background, some of those conversations can be a bit harder, but actually there's an ongoing resource throughout the vaccination period, which has started now. So they run from April all the way through to the end of May in schools across our patch. We'll be running these webinars. So you can also signpost your local community and your groups to these sessions if they'd like to kind of find out more. If there's no further questions for Mohsin, I'll move on to the campaign delivery. If you think of anything, do just pop it in the chat and we will answer. So just to give you a bit of context to how this work is sitting. So someone asked about having the slides and the recording shared after this session. We will of course do that. We'll tailor the slides slightly, so if you're planning on running a kind of one-to-one presentation, they'll work for you. What we'll also be providing is a very comprehensive HPV vaccine community toolkit, and this is specifically designed for faith communities, so that those few slides that Mohsin touched on at the end, where we've got some of those kind of spiritual beliefs or arguments that support health and well-being, that's expanded on within the toolkit. So you have all of the clinical information, and then there's a dedicated page to 5 of the major religions, looking at some of the teachings, the readings, that support the move towards vaccinating children and looking after ourselves and our community. And the hope is that some of that wording and some of that thinking will really support the conversations that you're having with your congregations or your communities. So we'll be sending you that. We'll also send you a few promotional materials. We know that when people run sessions, they quite like having a freebie or two, so we'll send them across to you to kind of get people interested and involved. We'll also send you further information around all the kind of parent webinars that we're running and any kind of online resources. There are lots of kind of good materials online around the HPV vaccine, but sometimes, as Mohsin referred to, it can be a little bit like looking for a needle in a haystack. There's a lot of misinformation out there that we need to challenge. So we'll send you some really kind of trusted, verified resources that you can use either in your sessions or cascade to your groups and communities. In terms of the bigger picture, so the way this work is sitting, RM partners are running a huge program of work around the HPV vaccine, and the work that you're doing is absolutely integral to that, and it's sitting in a kind of a wider picture. So just so you know what we're doing. The image that you see on your screen here is a real life local parent, and we had a recording session a while ago with a whole group of local parents who are supporting this campaign. So we have a very active social media campaign that's going out across all the big channels. So Instagram, Facebook, it's targeted very specifically to parents and also around areas or geographies where we know either the uptake's low or we're working with the secondary schools. That also includes some videos. So there's a talking head video that I will share with you, which kind of has some of those key stats and key information. So that's going out on social media. And there's a longer video as well, which features real parents from Northwest and Southwest London talking about the HPV vaccine and raising some of their kind of queries. It's supported by one of our GP clinicians, so that might be a really good resource for you to also share online or in your sessions. One of those videos is kind of on the big screen. So from Easter, it's been in key cinemas across Northwest and Southwest London as that last ad that you see before some of the big films that are out at the moment. So we're really doing a kind of huge, big campaign, both out of home and on the grassroots level. Hopefully you'll see some of these assets or images out and about as you're going across the patch. We'll have them on kind of bus stops, etc. So it is a big campaign that you are part of here. The other piece that we're doing a lot of work with the vaccination teams who actually deliver the vaccines in schools and also with our local secondary schools. We have a huge number, almost 500 across our patch, and we've been sending them resources, developing lesson plans, sending them lots of information around the vaccine so they feel empowered as teachers, as school nurses to have these conversations. So it is part of a kind of much wider picture, and I hope that that gives you I guess confidence in what you're saying and also reassurance when you see some of these messages out and about when you are around the area. The tagline that we have is "Say yes to cancer prevention." As Mohsin again talked about, there's a long history here where we associate HPV one with sexual activity and also for girls, and that's not the message that we need to be conveying. The message is this is for boys and girls; they can be equally affected, and it's about cancer prevention. We've got some hashtags, which are HPV vaccine, one jab, long-term protection. And within that community toolkit, again, there'll be lots of suggested wording. So if any of you have WhatsApp groups, community newsletters that you send out, we've put some suggested copy in there, and we'll also send you all the images that are part of this campaign. So you can send out exactly the same ads that will be appearing on social media to your groups as part of that kind of concerted NHS push. I'm always here if you have any questions or any queries, if you need anything in advance of your sessions. If you have a clinical question, we can always reach out to Mohsin or some of our other clinical colleagues to answer that. So we want you to feel as supported as possible in this. The activity that we're asking you to deliver is during the month of May. So 31st of May would be the deadline for running your activities. You obviously have Aneda and Josh, depending on where you're based, who will be the kind of practical support. And I know you've been liaising with them to get to this point. So all kind of invoices and practical issues, if you could go via them. But I am also here. You should have my email address from this calendar invite. So please do reach out if you need anything or you have any questions or queries. Does anyone have any questions about what we've just run through or talked about, or anything that you might like from us to support some of these conversations? Yes, Juby.
When you are giving us the printed copies for us to take back to the faith groups, would it kind of show some of the symptoms that that this cancer can bring, highlighting maybe the other cancers like the lung cancer, the head and neck cancer? So just to highlight that these sort of cancers, so that when we are doing the conversation, we can also show them that, you know, these cancers are also there. So is that something that is possible?
I can certainly pull together some kind of top level information about some of the cancers that HPV can cause. I think what we need to be, and Mohsin might want to come in here, careful about saying, is that HPV is asymptomatic most of the time. So the cancers that we're talking about, they're developed much later in life. So whilst you might catch it in, say, your late teens, that high risk strain, if your body doesn't naturally clear it, that's when you're developing the cancers. So we can absolutely give you further information if that would help, but I think you should be very careful about some of that messaging when you're out and about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. I'll make a note to do that. The Dawn Foundation. Sorry, I can't see your name. You want to come in?
Hi, my name is Amir. Thank you very much. Just a quick question. Will you have any video assets that's produced by faith leaders that we can share with our communities? I think that would work quite well.
In this current moment in time, sadly, no. What we have been doing, and again, most has been supporting with, is running a series of kind of roundtable conversations with local faith leaders on HPV. What we're working towards at the moment is having some kind of written statements, so we know that people are in support, and hopefully they will support with conversations when you're out and about, but we don't have any videos as such. There are more generic videos that we can send you links and signpost you to, but I would hope that that's something that we could develop going forward.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. So maybe we'll take that on board and have a chat, see if that's something that we can look into producing. Any other questions? I guess just, you don't have to necessarily speak, but just, has this webinar been helpful and informative? Do you all feel a bit more empowered? You can either just sort of react or nod your heads. Yeah, good. Okay, because it's important that we understand that this is helpful for you all, so that if there's anything that we can change, please do let us know so that we can adapt it further. But it looks like there's a lot of approval, so that's good. Okay. Well, if there's no further questions, then please do. Sorry.
Hi, everybody. I'm very sorry. I joined late because I have a technical problem. My name is Ikhlas Mohammed from HADO, or Hope for African Development Organization. I am the chairwoman of the organization, and I'm happy to deliver this project. And I share all this information with my community members. Do you have any materials that just to show them, because some people, they are worried or scared from the vaccines, just to persuade them the vaccine, the safety of the vaccine, no side effects from this vaccine. This is the most important.
Yeah, absolutely. We can share that information with you. So, Stephanie, would you be able to get some information to Ikhlas about the safety data? We've got a lot of data that we can share with you. That's not a problem, and it's all very easily available through the NHS website as well, so we can signpost that to you very easily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In the back of your toolkit, there'll be a useful resources section, which is hyperlinked, but also the URLs are in there. So there'll be lots of information if you're really interested, or that's the area that's a concern for your community. It will give you kind of all the stats. So it will be in your toolkit, but I can also pull together some further information when I send things out.
Thank you. That is great.
You're welcome. Amir, did you want to come back in? Old hand.
Yeah, old hand. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. The one final ask, so as I mentioned some of those hashtags that we have going on social media, and I think some of you wrote this within your applications. If you could promote on your channels using the same wording, the same hashtags, that would really help. Again, on this slide deck, which I'll send across to you, it has all the handles that we have at RM Partners, NHS Cancer Alliance. If you could tag us, that would be great, because then we can help to kind of amplify the message going forward. Other than that, thank you so much for joining today. We will send you all the resources that we hope you require to run these sessions in May. I'm only an email away, so any questions or queries at all, do just let me know. Oh, yes, Rachel.
I'm so sorry. It's so late. I'm sorry. I was trying to unmute myself. I just want to know, in terms of posters for advertising, would you be giving us posters? Because it'd be great to have those posters to put it out in front of the churches and for the community to see that we're having it ahead of time, so that they can know this is an upcoming event. So just wondering if you have any posters that we can use.
Yes, so we can print off some of posters that are the same as the kind of social media assets. So the example that I showed on the screen just there. What we wouldn't be able to do would be to give you an editable one. I know you're talking about having a kind of an event date just because it is standardized NHS information, but we can absolutely send you posters that look like the ad, so you can put those up alongside any further information that you would like.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I can see some thank yous in the chat. So there's a few actions for me there. I will get those out to you hopefully by the end of this week. The practical kind of printed resources, I will be sending those to the email, to the address that you provided on your application form. If you think that you would prefer to have them sent somewhere else, can you please either let myself, Josh, or Aneda know, or all three maybe, just to be on the safe side, and we'll make sure that they get sent to the right place. Otherwise, thank you so much. This is such an important topic, and I really look forward to seeing or hearing about what you do.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Cheers.
everyone.
Have a lovely
Thank you.
day. Bye.